Oh, Allan. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Hey, it's Mark LaCour, and welcome to Rock Studio Live. We're at the Rockwell Automation Fair. It has been a phenomenal 2 days, a lot of great presentations, a lot of learning, and I'm super lucky today I get to sit here and talk with Allan Rentcome. How you doing, Allan?
I'm doing well, and you?
I'm doing awesome. I had a chance to interface with a lot of your people the last couple of days, and you got a really good crew working for you. But in case the audience doesn't know who you are and what your company does, real quick, let's explain who you are and what you do.
Yeah, sure. So thanks for having me today. I'm looking forward to our conversation. Allan Rentcome, I'm responsible for Sensia. Sensia is a joint venture that was formed between Schlumberger and Rockwell Automation. I've been in the oil and gas business for in excess of 35 years. And
started when you were 7?
I was just 7, yeah. And and I've really sort of been really focused on helping to build and grow Sensia. We formed our company in October of 2019, and it was really bringing together kind of petrotechnical domain expertise and world-class process automation expertise from Rockwell, along with some cool technology that really allows us to kind of help our customers on their digital journey in oil and gas.
Yeah, so it's almost like a startup with 2 really big parents.
It is. It's a challenge, but it's a good challenge. I often talk about the fact that I sit on the shoulders of giants, and those giants are Rockwell Automation, in industrial automation, and then Schlumberger as oilfield services leader. And so bringing those 2 parents together through Sensia has really created a very unique value proposition for us.
Man, what great domain expertise between Schlumberger and Rockwell, 2 solid members of the industry. So one of the things that we've talked about that's been a theme is digital and technology. I want to talk a little about Sensia, because one of the things I think is really cool, yes, you help companies operate more efficiently, yes, you help companies operate safely, but what a lot of people don't understand is you also affect things like ESG. How cool is it that you run a safe, more efficient operation that's better for the environment?
Yeah, absolutely, and I think you're absolutely right. You know, we brought together these kind of domain expertise, and then we started to focus on very specific applications. You know, I think the term digital is something that is often sort of a bit stretched in terms of its definition, and within the oil and gas space, I think digital means different things for different customers, and for us to work with our partners and be that trusted partner and helping them develop applications that speak to real business needs in today's environment. And you know, I would also say that the definition of what is important to those customers today in this environment is quite different from 2 years ago. And so being agile and flexible in how we help them solve those problems is something that's really kind of core to what we do.
Yeah, and speaking of that, I want to ask a question to the audience. What problems are you dealing with in your business in the energy, oil and gas space that could use some help? Anything, everything, nothing too crazy. But let's talk about what's going on right now. I'd love to have some input from the online audience. So when I think about digital, first thing I think of is the word that's been overused by the vendors. But the second thing I think of, Allan, is that our industry has been needing to change for a very long time, and the market drivers never came together to make us change. And now we're being forced to change, and it's actually really incredible to see things like startups in our industry. When we were younger, you never saw a startup because it was a risk.
It was a risk.
Yeah. And so let's talk a little bit about things that is changing for especially the operators, and where does technology help them achieve their goals?
Yeah, it's a great question. So again, you mentioned the word digital and what it really means, and if I reflect on that with regards to today's market, so yes, we see lots of good signs in recovery, but still, you know, operators are being challenged with executing more with less. So how do they extend the life of their assets? How do they kind of transition from having a team of people to having individuals, because there's been changes in the workforce? How do they reduce their operational expenses, even in this current recovery climate? And so I think defining that in a digital context is one thing, but it's more important how you then take that context and then translate that into a very sort of specific set of actions. Within Sensia, we sort of think about all the way to the start where data is born at the sensing device, which is important, but now you've got to give that data value. Then once you're given that data value, how do you operate on that data to do something quite meaningful? Within Sensia, we call that intelligent action, taking value and automating that and kind of doing something that really provides real value to the customer in their day-to-day operations.
Yeah, it's really amazing to watch all these changes come in. One of the things I've noticed, though, is there tends to be 2 approaches, and one doesn't work at all, and one seems to work really well. There's a lot of people and organizations out there that that want to go digital, want to bring their operations up to digital. Well, that really doesn't mean much of anything. And then try to get budgetary approval for going digital.
Yeah.
Yet, if you have small wins, if you take small problems and solve them, then you set a road to success. But it also helps you get budget to grow the project.
You're absolutely right. I think when we look at our customers, and we obviously talk to the widest spectrum of oil and gas customers, but to your point, working with a large national oil company where the thresholds and decision making is at different levels to do a longer journey is very different than working with customers where, for them, digital transformation might be just measuring values from their asset that they were unable to measure before, and then giving them some insights to that information. That is a very small step in the right direction. And we understand that everybody at different sizes are at different points in their journey. I think they struggle with defining what the end point is.
Yeah.
And so we think that if we can work with them to help them take small steps towards that end point as they're thinking about what it really needs to be, I think that's more of a pragmatic, and in reality how most customers are looking at this, because I think it's just a massive problem to solve for one sort of single step.
Yeah, and I want to get a little bit more specific. So on the upstream, on the operator side of the house, I've heard this from a lot of small independent operators where they're running legacy fields, brownfields, right?
Yeah.
And they go, well, there's no need for us to bring in modern technology, modern sensors.
Yeah.
We've done this for 30 or 40
Sure.
years. And even though they've done it for 30 or 40 years, there is a step in improvement when you start bringing modern technology into the actual field itself.
There absolutely is. And I think, for them to even be convinced of that, you've got to start with what is a reasonable pricing point for them to see that value. And so the idea to be scalable in your offering is really important. Not everyone's going to put a new SCADA system in, or going to put a new IoT platform in. And as you say, for some of those users, they absolutely believe that, look, there's no need for this because this is how we've operated. But when you can show them how they can get insights to things that they've never experienced before, it's sort of a bit of an awakening, right? And then they realize that there's more they can do with that information than they've ever done before. And I think that's what we see when we talk to our customers.
Yeah, and audience, if you notice the water on my face, my apologies. I actually got caught in the 15 seconds that it rained before I stepped in here, so I'm still recovering from that. So my apologies for being a little damp. It's Houston weather. So Allan, when I think about the future for our industry, we have we have the energy transition going on. We're starting to get competition from different energy sources. But the hydrocarbon molecule, in my opinion, is probably the most valuable molecule to mankind. The oil and gas industry, in my opinion, isn't going anywhere. We're just changing.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. I think that it's a long journey which people think about, and that's a very long journey to how this industry would transform with new energy and alternative energy and sustainable energy sources, which I think is appropriate. But if you look in the sort of medium term, which is many, many years, the need for energy from hydrocarbons is still an incredibly important part of the growth of GDP and how people consume energy. And in one of the reports I've read recently, over the next 5 years, 55% of the world's energy will come from hydrocarbons.
Yeah.
And I think that's just a reality of our infrastructure and how our equipment operates. And so I think oil and gas is going to be around for a very long time.
Yeah, I think it's going to be around forever. But back to the hydrocarbons, one of the things that's kind of cool now is we can now produce environmentally responsible hydrocarbons. We can produce low-carbon hydrocarbons.
Sure.
It didn't actually take us very long to figure out.
Yeah, I agree.
But the work that Sensia does, it actually layers exactly on top of that, because unless you can track and measure, you don't know what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have industry-leading software that currently is kind of focused on hydrocarbon accounting, but actually taking that same framework of technology and thinking about carbon accounting in the future is sort of some of the direction that we think about when we think about future plans for new products within Sensia.
Now, the other thing that's starting to, or has been booming, let's skip COVID for a little bit, is petrochemicals,
Sure.
right? That's something a lot of people don't think about, but almost everything that is required for modern lifestyle, look around the studio, 90% of the stuff here
Sure.
is made from hydrocarbons. Petrochemical plants are growing globally, right? The demand for petrochemicals will continue to grow up. Once again, another great place to layer technology to make safe, efficient operations.
Oh, absolutely. And if you look at the entire supply chain, so you get an increase in demand in those petrochemical environments, which means more feedstock. That feedstock's got to come from somewhere. So, layering in an end-to-end solution where you can track all of those pieces of your supply chain, your processes, allows you to drive efficiencies and kind of meet the demands of the current environment that we're in.
All right, so here's where I'm going to throw you a curveball.
Uh-oh.
So when you look at the future, what do you think's coming?
That's a great question, and you know, I think there's a way to look at this holistically, and obviously I don't have a crystal ball, but I think you're right earlier on when you said there seems to be this renewed interest in sort of looking at this transformation, and I think that's been born out of the fact that we've been through a very challenging time in our industry, and I think it's forced us to reevaluate some of those earlier kind of concepts around digital transformation and what that truly means, and I do believe that customers will get very specific in their needs to define the end point for them on this journey. And I think the technology is available today. I think there's no constraints on our technology today. I think it's just making sure we harness the domain expertise to use that technology to meet those business outcomes. And I just think digital requires a little bit of a focus and reset to sort of define exactly for customers how they can measure the success of that transformation.
Yeah, the other place that technology is playing a role is we have a talent shortage in this industry.
Yeah.
And because of public perception, it's not going to get better anytime soon.
Right.
And so one of the solutions when you can't hire the right people is technology.
Sure.
But the fear that I've heard from a lot of people is that technology is going to replace their jobs, and I don't believe that 1 second.
No, I don't believe that either. I think there's certainly lots of manual processes that you can automate, but at the end of the day, you need domain expertise to kind of, you know, use that understanding of how people operate their plants just to make how they do things more efficient. I don't think technology is a replacement for that expertise because there are just so many dynamics that come into play, particularly in complex operations that we see in oil and gas. You know, in some other kind of industries, it might not be so complex, but certainly in oil and gas, as you know, the variability of the process is huge. So I think, you know, domain expertise in technology, simplification, I think is absolutely important. Simplifying how we do things so we can be smarter and more efficient. Absolutely, we should be driving that direction. But we need that domain expertise.
Yeah, one of the nice things is as you train the machines to do jobs, you need somebody to train the machine, right? So the worker that may have been a frontline worker doing valve packing now becomes a knowledge worker. Now he's removed away from the places that might be dangerous, right? Now he's training the machine to do work that normally a human would have to do. And so you take the harm and the risk of lost time incident out of that, and it's like a beautiful end result.
Absolutely, and I think, you know, the other thing I think is quite prevalent at the moment is how knowledge is transferred and better utilized. So how do you do virtualized training? You can see here at Automation Fair, you can see examples of where you can use virtual technical assistants to help diagnose issues in the field using an iPad and overlaying, you know, sort of asset data, and then being able to call a domain expert in the control room and say, this is what I'm seeing, you know, give me some guidance on how to fix that problem. This is not displacing resources, it's just harnessing the power of technology with that domain expertise to quickly solve problems in the field.
Yeah, that remote worker is really cool. It's amazing to see some senior person supervise a bunch of junior people safely from the other side of the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But in order to do that, you have to have the data, which is one of the things that Sensia provides, is to make sure you have the data. So that even while you're doing remote working, people are,
It's foundational, right? I think with digital, there's a tendency to start at the end point. We want, you know, augmented reality, we want digital twins, we want all these things, which are fantastic, and we absolutely do want those things. But without the data being contextualized and being trusted and being readily available across the entire enterprise, we talk a lot about edge-to-enterprise applications, and the idea that applications can run anywhere in that ecosystem based on the user needs. I think that's a really important component here, but as you say, none of that is possible without harnessing the data to give you those insights.
So you and I have been talking about a lot of stuff, and if we have some operators out there, some petrochemical plants, feel free to ask your questions. Because here's one I hear a lot, is when you have legacy control systems in place, nobody has the time or budget to go forklift those and put something brand new in, but you don't have to forklift legacy
Absolutely
systems.
not. It's one of our core sort of value propositions of Sensia. You know, we work closely with our users. As I said earlier, you know, currently they have to do, you know, more with less. So they have to maximize the use of their existing assets. And often in these assets, data is heavily siloed.
Yeah.
It's just not connected. It's there, but there's no accessibility. And so we really focus on working pragmatically with customers on how to connect that asset to an information system, because without that, they can't even begin to start to get insights. And so I think in the current environment where CapEx thresholds are very high, we have to kind of be just mindful of the fact that customers want to do more with less, but they need to understand how to connect to that information in the field.
Yeah, and by not having the forklift legacy systems, you could do a step change, right? And so you can slowly bring in the new technology. Now here's another thing that's relatively new in our industry. Up until say 5 or 6 years ago, when I said cybersecurity, the only people that knew who that was the CIO, maybe the CSO. Right. But now the business of oil and gas is concerned with cybersecurity because we've had recent incidents that shuts down infrastructure. That's also one of the dangers, though, of with these legacy systems, legacy control systems. You got to be real careful. You just don't want to take an operational technology system and connect it to your IT system because now the bad guys have a million points of entry.
Absolutely.
You got to think about cybersecurity up front.
You do, and you have to take a layered approach to security. And in Sensia, all of our technology kind of layers security in at the lowest level, and we build that layer of security, as you integrate those assets more and more into your ecosystem. So we provide those kind of cybersecurity services along with our parent company, particularly Rockwell has those kind of services, and we leverage those when we go and do field assessments. And then we make recommendations to customers where we think they have gaps, and where if you do connect that asset, this is kind of the layered security approach that you need to take to ensure that you're not compromising your ecosystem.
Yeah, and if we have any petrochemical or fuel refinery operators out there, your process controllers, if they're from the 80s and 90s, I know what the password is because y'all never changed it. Right?
It's admin and admin.
It's admin and admin, right? And so seriously, if you're listening, reach out. Sensia, y'all do not have a heavy sales hand at all. You're actually, in my interactions with y'all, you're very helpful, useful. You're trying to help. Yeah. You're one of the few companies I've seen go, no, we can't help you, which is awesome.
Absolutely.
Right? So if you want some help with this, reach out to them. The domain expertise, they've been doing this for a long time. Look at their parents, right? So don't think of them as a startup. But things like cybersecurity, come on, people, we need to get a handle on this now because it's only going to get worse before it gets better. Sure. So are we getting close to winding down? Yeah, keep going. So it's time to cut it. Okay, so Allan, now they're telling me to try to get out of here. So real quick, if you want to learn more, go to rok.auto and click on the link in this post to get more information, more topics. Audience, thank you for your time. Allan, this has been awesome.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, looking forward to doing this again.
You bet. Thank you so much.
All right.